Let's call this meeting to order. We'll start with the budget hearing on the 2019 budget. Go ahead, Lynn.
Okay. So you have in your packet a resolution adopting the operating budget. On the next page, you actually have that high-level operating budget that we bring to you each year so that we can complete the levy certification and get it in on time. As you can see, we no longer have the debt service levy starting in 2019 because it came off the debt. So our entire levy for the district will be just shy of $9,000. So I would ask the board if they would approve both of these, resolution 18-08 and 18-09. I'm also happy to answer any questions if you have them.
Okay, we have a motion from Bob, second from Roy. Let's open it up to discussion or questions. We don't have any questions about a $75 million budget. Okay.
Oh, sorry, I meant the top of my bill there.
No. Just,
Well, remember, this is just a very
no, I
to
get
get it
it.
going.
I get it.
Okay, that was
I think I'd be
okay.
doing
That was a joke.
I didn't think I'd be approving this when I was $75 million. Anyway, all right. So we have a motion and a second. If I hear no further questions or discussion, all those in favor of approving the operating budget and the authorization, these are together?
They're actually two different resolutions.
Okay, so
One
just
is
the adoption of 2019.
1808 is the adoption of the budget, and then 1809 is the
Okay.
resolution. For the
So resolution 1808, adoption of 2019 budget. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All right, that's unanimous. All votes. Leon, of course, is gone, so. Okay, on to the regular property tax levy authorization. As you said, it's just shy of 9,000. Any, I mean, this is, you guys are all used to seeing this. Any questions about this? Anything to tell us?
No.
Yeah, okay. Good.
It's the lowest in the state.
It is the lowest.
It is the lowest
But I
as
think we should
for
mention that.
anyone that takes one.
Yeah.
It doesn't, our daily operating expenses is probably about 190,000. So there you go.
Yes. Very low tax rate.
I move for its adoption.
Okay, Roy, motion. Second from Mayor. Any further questions or discussion? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, unanimous, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Libby. This will adjourn the budget hearing. 3 minutes. Okay, so let's call our regular meeting to order. Thank you all for coming, appreciate it. Approval of agenda. Anything to add to the agenda? I have one little addition to old business. I'm just going to do a very brief update on the CEO evaluation process. I'll just add that under old business. Any other changes or additions to the agenda? Any motion to approve from Erica? Any second?
Second.
Second from Bob. Any questions, discussion? Hearing none, then all those in favor of approving the agenda as amended, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous, thank you. Consent agenda, you guys have had the chance to look at that. Hopefully, minutes of the last board meeting, approval of checks. Do we have minutes from the special board meeting?
They'll be in next month.
Next month. So from the last monthly meeting, approval of checks, we've worked with the foundation, finance committee. One thing I'll mention, I said this to Julie earlier, I was pretty impressed by the foundation report. That was, I mean, all those grants and things, and especially that opioid grant.
She's doing really good work, and I think that the work that she's doing with the KCHN and Health Source out in the community is really, she's really starting to be seen as the go-to person for this work.
Great.
Thank you to Lauren on that.
Yeah. Okay, any additional discussion or questions about the consent agenda? All right, hearing none, then do I have a motion to approve? Okay, Eric. Second. All right, all those in favor of approving the consent agenda, please say aye. Aye. Unanimous, thank you. No presentations tonight. We'll hold off. I don't think we have anyone for public comment, but we'll hold off on that till around 5:30 to make sure that if anyone is planning to come before then, we'll have a chance. So let's move then to quality. Manuel?
Don't have anything to add. I just really excited about our revised coffee process, and you should have received an email from me and continuing to work on that.
Yeah, at last QI council meeting, we really kind of dug in there, and that was after you had already done a whole lot of work.
Well, all the leaders in the organization have done quite a bit of work, so yeah, not just me.
Right, of course. That was in fact one of the little shifts in things. It's more of a kind of bottom-up approach.
Yep.
I think the board's aware of it, but do you want to just talk briefly for a minute, just to remind people about that process?
Yeah, well, and some of it actually was from Julie too, a really great idea about we shouldn't have quality plans that are separate from the strategic initiatives of the organization. They should really complement each other and be thinking about that when we're prioritizing the work we do throughout the year. And so that was a different approach, as well as thinking about we have to evaluate our services annually. Why wouldn't we be using that time to also say, what is it that we do provide as a service to the community? How well are we doing with that? And shouldn't that also help us decide what we should be working on from a quality point of view? So people brought forward their different scope of services they had, or started thinking about, you know, if I'm a finance department, what do I do for the organization? Or quality, what do we provide? And looking first at what services we provide, the scope of those services, looking at the strategic plan, and then saying what can we work on and how can we narrow that. And then presenting them to each other, and I think that was similar to things we've done before, but different also. And that was really nice to hear across what other people are doing and how we can really help drive the initiative together. So how we're working together with the emergency department and quality, or between MedSurg and emergency department, or across the clinics, that we're all headed in the same direction. So that they drafted their scope of service, their quality assessment performance improvement plans, reviewed them with their administrative leaders, talked about them together. Those were summarized in a summary document that was presented to QI Council, and that was what I sent to you. So we were looking for feedback, and then I'd like that by November 1st, so I can get that back out to the leaders so they can work on revising, and then thinking about how would they measure improvement. There are some measures on there, but wanting to solidify that too, so that if the December QI Council can start thinking about what is appropriate for the QI Council dashboard. So really to have that oversight view going into 2019. What do you need to see, right? You don't want 300 measures that you're looking at on the dashboard. Anything else I can add? So it'll come back to the board for final approval at the December board meeting, which is actually in January.
It's a pretty impressive process, in case you didn't figure that out. So if you do have a chance, obviously, to look at that document that she sent, be sure to do that, please, before November 1st.
I'll just say it was a really, really engaged process. I mean, the quality of the conversation and the way people were sharing ideas, it was an impressive event. Thank you.
Any questions about?
I have one question on the dashboard. This is on page 21. The second bullet down on the vaccination
Oh yeah.
for influenza. Is that just? Is it based on just the full-time employees, or
No.
are the part-time and per diem employees
Yes.
included in some
So
way?
we record our influenza vaccination rates to the CDC, and they require that anyone who's been in your building for 1 day working during the reporting period, which is September through March. 1 day, they work 1 day. You have to document their immunization status for the flu shot.
How does that work? How does that work with scheduling and for schedulers of departments? Is HR keep in touch with them to let them know if somebody's eligible for work or not, depending on their status?
Well, HR coordinates with employee health with Julie Hershey to make sure we have updated lists of anyone who's worked with that, and there's some data merging that happens that Amy Diaz helps us with. But then, so as of November 1st, Julie's been letting department directors know if they have any employees who have not yet documented their status, and they won't be able to work after November 1st if they haven't declined or received vaccination. Yeah.
So that does include part-time as well as
Yep.
per diem.
Yes.
Then I guess I don't understand the on the dashboard measure on page 23, employee flu vaccinations, it shows 96%.
Is that still last season?
Yeah. That was last season.
It'll renew on November 1st, and they'll get new figures.
Oh, I see.
That's why
Okay.
there's the blank.
All right, so, okay.
No, it's October. I said September.
Yeah,
October,
okay.
November, December. 6 months.
All right. And then under improvement opportunities, there were 3 patient falls in August. One of those was involved injury. Is that correct?
Yes. So an injury too can mean anything that needs, it can be an abrasion. It doesn't, that needs an intervention. So if it's a skin tear, and let me just check my notes, and I can tell you what, I don't remember off the top of my head what it was, but I think it may have been.
I mean, typically we have 1 or 2 falls of.
I think that was a skin tear. Too, yeah. It wasn't, so it can be as bad as a fracture or, but a lot of times it is like a skin tear and it's
So the data that you are collecting are not reflective in any differentiation between major and minor type of injury, it's just an injury. Period.
Right, and that's the definition that WISHA uses as well.
Okay. All right, thank you.
I mean, they go through every individual fall in Falls improvement team, and they do a root cause analysis on each of them. So it is differentiated, but not on that dashboard.
Yeah. Okay.
I think you mentioned at QI Council that sometimes if there are family members there, it's sort of hard to kind of keep an eye on them, or you leave the room, and then so there are a lot of opportunities, I think, for falls. So it's good that you guys are looking into those.
Well, and what you should remember too, that although this number does not include non-patient falls, it's all patient falls. So we even include the clinics, rehab services, home health. What's reported to WISHA is only inpatient falls with injury, so not even observation patients that are in those units. But we choose to look at all of those, and part of the reason for that is falls that happen on our campus are covered under our general liability, even if they're not patients. You can have workers' comp claims too that are related to staff falls, so we do look at all falls because there's risk to the organization with all of them.
Yeah.
Respectfully.
Thank you.
Any other questions for me? Quality. Okay. All right, on to the CEO.
So I wanted to lead, following up on my comment about information systems and the DM team. We did make the determination today that we were going to decline that engagement, which really makes sense. We felt there was a need to have more community work focused, particularly on revenue cycle. There's a certain amount of urgency around revenue cycle. DM was pretty insistent that they had to own the entire project, and we just couldn't be comfortable with that. So initially we went to them looking for an interim CIO. We have a couple of good candidates and a number of candidates in the pool to look at. So check back with Libby on the revenue cycle side and Hannah Doolin, who's the informaticist working on that. We are getting good support from Community Works at this point. The lead, Laura Mann, the project manager on that, has been very attentive. She's identified revenue cycle resources, Cerner resources that will be here next week, and a full-time person that will be here beginning December 1st from Cerner to help us on revenue cycle specifically. So they'll be arriving just about the same time our revenue cycle manager. So we feel like we have their attention. IT, after talking with the team about declining this engagement, they're comfortable with that. They feel like they all know what their assignment number is. So we'll be looking for CIO. I also wanted to mention, we've been talking about the RFP that we did for radiology, diagnostic and interventional radiology services. We went through an RFP process, and we had two companies that responded. One was, I always get this wrong, MDIG, and the other was Yakima Valley Radiology. MDIG's proposal was very strong, but we've had a long-standing relationship with Yakima Valley Radiology, and the consensus of the group that did the analysis was that based on that relationship, we needed to redefine what our metrics were, what our expectations of the customer were, and work closely with Yakima Valley Radiology to see that they met those. So we were moving ahead with a contract with Yakima Valley Radiology when we learned that one of their senior radiologists had resigned. The new arrangement is that we will have a full-time radiologist here Monday through Friday. With this resignation, that left them short in the ability to do that, and they notified us of that. So in my hand, I have the MDIG contract, which we are prepared to execute. We also heard from Dr. Wes Johnson this week that they had an emergency meeting with Yakima Valley Radiology. They are working very hard, and Rhonda has a contract now to provide the level of service that we talked about before. So when I leave, Dr. Martin and Rhonda are going to go through the two contracts and see exactly where they get. So.
But it's still up in the air?
It's still up in the air, and at this point, there are good reasons to go either way. So I think really sitting down and what I'm concerned about is Dr. Martin from the provider perspective and Rhonda from the manager perspective have to be convinced that Yakima Valley Radiology can execute on what they're saying to be doing. That we're not going to see days when we're short or there's not someone here. So we do have 180-day out with Yakima Valley Radiology, so this will be a long transition.
Any questions about that?
So costs are pretty close.
No, there is no cost with Yakima Valley Radiology. There's also no revenue. There's about $200,000
Yes, but we would not be then incurring the costs of PACS or PACS administrator.
with MDIG. So they also have metrics about referrals and promotional materials on how to grow the business, and it's very different. So they bring their own PACS system. And they are here essentially, the reason they can run this model is they are night hawking or reading other people's films while they're here fulfilling their full-time obligation. Okay. I also wanted to mention that I talked a little bit about the Rural Hospital Committee and the direction that the Healthcare Authority is going with global payments. So we're very engaged with that. We also, Dr. Martin is engaged with the Greater Columbia ACH. I'm the hospital representative there. Hope Source and KCHN are moving ahead to administer the $200,000 opioid grant that Lauren was able to secure for us, so we're putting the arrangements in place.
Sorry, the two entities there is KCH and
KCH and HopeSource. So HopeSource will be the fiscal agent, so they'll employ the folks associated with this and take care of all the bookkeeping. And at the end of the day, the real operational work, the patient-centered work that's going to be done by this grant is already underway with CHCW and Dr. Azrael. So it really is an opportunity to bring all that a number of the agencies that have been working together with KCH together. So just heads up that we're moving ahead with that. 340B, we've talked about several times, and I just wanted to mention that the American Hospital Association has asked all hospitals to take a pledge about disclosing what they do with the proceeds of the 340B program. So it would be on our website, it would go to the public and let them know that the proceeds from a program like this are what allow us to subsidize the emergency department and OBM services like that. And the fact that no one leaves our facility without the prescription that they need from the emergency department, whether they can afford it or not. So I think the AHA is really concerned, and WISHA is concerned, that with all the scrutiny 340B is getting, they want to highlight the fact that this is a program that funds the safety net services that a hospital like ours is able to provide.
So is there a process people have to go through if they're leaving the emergency room and they can't afford their
Yes.
hypertensive medication?
There's a policy that's applied by the pharmacist.
Okay.
And then I have, I wanted to talk about the PEP, and I'm actually looking for a board motion. And we've talked about the need, the problems we're having with the new government accounting standards board pronouncement that would require us to book a multi-million-dollar liability and hundreds of thousands of dollars in expenses that we don't think appropriately reflect the costs associated with the PEP. So through the AWPHD, we identified Parker Smith and Fee as a consultant to help us go out and get a bid from other insurance companies, and we have identified a savings of approximately $402,000 with 402 with comparable benefits. We've begun the discussion with the Insurance Advisory Committee. We'll begin the discussion with the bargaining units. But we do need to notify the PEB that it is our intent to leave the PEB. So I would like a motion from the board directing administration to notify the PEB that we intend to identify a different provider for welfare benefits effective January 1, 2019.
A question about that. You mentioned working with the bargaining unit and that there are comparable benefits. We should get out of this before we're sure that it's going to be acceptable.
We have to notify the PEB by November 1st. We can rescind the notification.
Okay. Any questions?
Sounds reasonable to me. Can change your mind.
The other thing, the other thing I would say is going with this particular plan allows us in not the high deductible plan, but in the PPO version of this Premier Blue Cross plan, would allow us to create a domestic network that would incentivize our employees to use our own services. So we're working on the structure of that with a particular IDA pharmacy.
Okay. Okay, so we have resolution number 18-10 here, termination of the PEB medical benefits. Any further questions or discussion? Seeing none, then motion.
So moved.
Okay.
I'll second.
Okay, Roy makes a motion, second from Erica. Any further questions or discussion about resolution 18-10? Hearing none, then all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. It's unanimous. Thank you.
Question about that. Is there, you might have mentioned this, and if you did, I apologize, other organizations moving away from that for some reasons?
We're aware that when we Hospital is definitely a new, like, have we heard that others, Laura, I don't know,
All
Joan.
11.
What's that?
All 11 are actually in discussions right now about moving away from the pen.
Whether they're able to do it this year.
Or next
Not
year.
all of them, but they will do it next year.
So it's,
Okay. Next, business plan, right?
Not yet.
Okay.
I have some money to ask for here.
Oh.
So I mentioned at the meeting on Monday night that we were looking at, it is something that we would have to do as part of the larger project anyway, but we've been coached by Randy Kaiser and Ron and by the architects that it would be a much cleaner bid process if we were able to do the demolition ahead of the project, so that when people came in to bid, we were out to the walls and there were no surprises. The budget number covers all of the SHS spaces and nothing else, as we are wanting to keep the foot clinic pretty much the way it is. And I am asking for authorization. Again, this is under the small works contract, so we don't have to take it to bid, for $250,000 to do the demolition.
And did you say that it's just the third floor or the second floor space as well?
The budget number covers all VSHS spaces and nothing else, as we are wanting to keep the foot clinic as it is.
Okay, so that large offered suite on the second floor will
That's all, that is actually what we're shooting for. So that long skinny thing, that's just
no,
the one we were in?
yeah, one where
Yeah.
we noticed the windows.
Yes. So I'm, given that that's a DSHS space, I'm anticipating that
And so, and then that was my next question, the conference / proposed break area. Oh, it's just down to the steel.
it is.
That's the ideal.
Right, that's what we'd like the contractors to be able to see when they come in, that kind of really open.
So, and is that number based on a square footage basis, or how did they come up with that number?
DK Powell, who's a contractor on their small works, came through and gave that estimate for one. So they would have to create a contract and really define it.
So, I mean, is that a fairly standard number, or how, I'm not quite sure how they came up with 250 number? Is that based on prior demolition
Yeah.
projects?
Yeah, so this is the contractor who's already working in the building, already working on women's health. So Ron and Randy specifically had DK Powell go through and
Because Matt and I would do it for 225.
The actual number was 196, but I got it up to here.
Okay.
With surprises.
I won't do it.
That's too low for us.
So Dr. Martins has suggested a New Year's Eve party complete with champagne and sledgehammers, and nothing can possibly go wrong in that.
5, 4.
So I would ask for authorization to move forward with this if the opportunity seems to be appropriate.
All right, so there are three different authorizations, right? 250 and 160. Am I missing that?
No, 200,000, 250.
250.
Right. I don't anticipate it will do that.
Yeah, okay. All right, so, and this comes under the,
It comes under the small works.
okay, so the request is for a $250,000 cost for improvements to the medical arts center.
Have they given any indication of what the timeline is like for demolition? I mean, they probably don't want to work January 1st, but the 2nd, I mean, are they available soon? Or?
I don't know the answer to that. That's one of the reasons I want the flexibility. If we can pull the trigger and get them to the first and second floor and get civil come out, I'd like to do that.
Yep, so this is, all right. Any additional questions about the $250,000 request? Okay, hearing none, motion to approve. Okay, Karen, second from Bob. Any additional question or discussion? Okay. Hearing none, then all those in favor of approving the $250,000 expense for improvements in the medical arts center, please. Aye. Aye. Yes, thank you.
If there's, I will keep you informed of that project moves forward, and if there's any changes or rethinking. I appreciate the flexibility.
So I did have one question about that. This is sort of about legal things and being under the small works number, which is what?
300.
300. Does it ever put us in a bad position if we were to sort of keep making small, like under $300,000 improvements, you know, in dribs and drabs? I mean, I'm not saying we're doing that, but you know, I mean, well, that's sort of a legal question.
Well, it's a state auditor question also, and so it is triggered. So the answer to your question is, if it's apparent that that's what you're doing, you're bidding one room and, you know, estimating one room and then another. It's more problematic when you're talking about the difference between the landlord doing it and you doing improvements, because if you are triggering the build or you're triggering the improvements, then it's supposed to be a public bid if it goes over $300,000. So those sorts of deals between landlords and leases can be more problematic. So this is, I think, a very genuine, we have a really good, solid reason for doing this.
No, it makes sense. I mean, ultimately it'll save us money, so that's good.
And a better bid, I think. So the next one, Mountain View for speech and occupational therapy. You will notice that in the board packet I said $160,000, and the document in front of you is $195,109. That is total project cost. We did have the Department of Health go through yesterday, was it?
Yes.
And they didn't identify any additional changes. In fact, they told us that one of the sinks could come out. We don't anticipate that we're going to have IT needs, but if you're moving around your docks and drops, then that can come up. This is the building at 309 that we do not own. So I sat down with the owner of the building, and we talked about the terms of the lease and trying to recoup these costs. So the existing lease runs through November of 2022, and our current monthly lease rate as of today is $10,035 a month, or $120,420 a year. The current lease calls for an annual escalator of 1.5%. And again, it ends in November 30th of 2022. So what we have proposed is that we amend the lease to extend it to November of 2028. That allows us a longer period of time to depreciate the improved assets and goods. We also are going to amend the lease, making the leasee responsible for property taxes. When we as the leasee are responsible for property taxes, we immediately turn around and we apply for property tax exemption because we use it for an emergency purpose. So there's about $13,000 this year in property taxes that the lease, that the owner would not be paying. And we've asked for that back in a credit every month in our lease rate. So that's a credit of about $1,112 a month throughout the term of the lease that we're asking for.
To 2028?
To 2028. We've also negotiated a 24-month inflator. So rather than having that 1.5% apply to the lease rate every 12 months, it would apply every 2 years instead through 2028. So our lease rate in December of 2019 would have been $10,186. It would now be $9,074. So when you compare what we would be paying to what this new negotiated rate would be through 2028, we actually save $182,109. We also will, when we apply for exemption for property tax, we will get back the first half taxes. That's about a little over $6,000. So we'll get a check from the county for the first half of the 2018 property taxes. And as part of that, we have about right around $20,000 in carpet that we're replacing, and the landlord has agreed with that $6,000 and another not to exceed $5,000 to contribute out to the replacement of carpet. So that gets us to $191,609 of the $195,000.
It's nearly a wash. When it's
Yes.
over time.
It is. And I think that in terms of the facilities, that speech and OT would have access to a pediatric gym now, access to physical therapists, so folks that have more than one modality, the therapists would be able to come to them. We have a wonderful opportunity in occupational therapy to have a functioning kitchen, and laundry room and a bed for people to make, so that we can really help people with activities of daily living, which we don't have the ability to do now. So I'm asking for 190.
What was the total square footage?
No, 7,600, and this is about half. This actually is about 60%.
And then, if I remember, I mean, we remodeled that space before,
When we
like
went,
5 years ago.
We didn't do much to it. We did a little
We
bit down in
added
home
more
health.
cubicles is
Yeah.
what we had to have, and individual office type spaces is what we added when we first moved in.
Yeah.
And the work now is primarily sinks, having to cut through concrete again for sinks, for hand washing, for patient care.
We didn't do much though. We did it mostly in the home health area. We didn't really remodel the space. Any other
Yeah, I just.
Oh, wait, we did one,
yeah.
yeah.
I remember the, and I appreciate the negotiation that went into this one, because last time there was no negotiation. We even did something with the technology.
neither one of us are very happy, and I
Yeah.
always consider that sort of a acceptable negotiation.
So this, you say unless the Department of Health identifies substantial additional requirements. So is this number taking care of any sort of additional requirements, or do we still have to hear from them?
They were through the building and they did not have additional requirements.
All right, so this is,
Yes.
all right. So, any additional questions about the construction costs for occupational speech therapy?
If I could mention, Brandy feels like we can do in it, we space that in the gym.
Is that a promise of the public forum end of January?
You obviously have not negotiated with Brandy. I told him 195, but we were going to work really hard to keep it under 160, and he was left shaking his head.
All right, any additional questions?
I have one.
Yeah.
Do we think that this space will be adequate over the life of the lease and how long it takes to almost break even on it?
Yes, I think this is such a step up from the current speech and OT space. So much more space, private patient space. Anything you want to?
It's fabulous. I think we're going to have pretty much a state-of-the-art OT speech therapy building. It will be so nice. I can't wait for you to see it.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, then we have the $195,000 estimate. So a motion to approve that expense.
I'll make a motion.
Okay. Motion, Bob, to the construction costs.
Second.
Second from Erica. Any additional questions or discussion?
Do we have a ribbon cutting for it?
All right, so all those in favor of approving this expense to renovate occupational speech therapy space, please say aye. Aye. unanimous, thank you.
Thank you very much. Again, I will get better at refining those numbers. I do want to confess that I use Bob Davis as he's really hard. Got to come down. So you're the specter.
Yeah. All right.
But that is it for me, unless anyone has any questions.
Any additional questions about her report? Okay. All right, so next up is the business plan. All right, and the report.
All right.
Sorry to interrupt. Just in case, I don't want to read the public comments, so in case there's anybody here who wants to make public comments, this is a public meeting, so if you have anything to say, please state your name and address and keep your comments to 3 minutes. If there's anyone who would like to speak, please do so now. Every now and again, you have someone from the board or elsewhere who goes on public record. So I just wanted to. All right, thank you. Sorry to interrupt there.
Can I just mention that Mandy has updated the calendar? So I know it's pretty routine to look at it, but I think the dates for next year's meetings are there.
The 2019 calendar is not in here.
Oh, it's not.
It'll be on the next month's board meeting.
Okay. All right.
Yeah,
Sorry about
it's
that.
really
Never
close
mind.
to being
Same
done.
old thing.
No, sorry. Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, if you get it, once you get to 2019, if you had it prior to the meeting, if you wouldn't mind just sending it to us. Thank you.
Access.
So our leaders for Access are Vicky Machero, myself, Mitch Engel, and Dr. Martin. We have updated his name. It's been Dr. Solberg for quite a little while. And so
In the report,
So Dr. Martin, your strategy one under Access, would you like to talk to your part?
Community surveys are a work in progress. We can build on the countywide shot chip process in terms of what their data showed. We've had excellent recruiting results, and that's about where I'm at.
Okay. And strategy two was design care models and processes to meet patient needs. So the deliverable under there was all around PCMH, and you can see in our report out that is still a work in progress as well. We completed our gap analysis, and we have 56 of the 4 indicators that we've met, and that's got to happen 50% of the, 50% of the credit indicators that we've met. Sorry, I thought it said 106%.
Thanks, Chris.
We like to give 106% here at KVH. Anyway, so you can see that we're getting a lot of extra help with our patient center medical home initiative around our ACO partner and what's called TCPI. There's some free resources that are available to us, so we're really excited and we're planning out our implementation plan.
Additionally, on that plank, the ACH
And that's
is,
in my report too.
sorry.
There's an alphabet soup here in my report, and
I didn't see
apologize.
GCash.
It's in there.
Very bottom.
Yep.
Oh, there it is.
Yep.
Give me those.
Right in front of you. Yep. Any questions on strategy two?
So what's the expectation with our ACO partner? What are they, engaging them to kind of help us out, but they.
Okay. So the ACO concept has been around for 4 or 5 years. They rolled out a couple of models for rural ACOs, because again, that's a model that's supposed to start with capital Medicare lives and go from there. So I think this Caravan, the model that we're going to be working with, provides back to us, so they have this light beam source, that for the first time, you are not looking at just your costs and things that you've done to and for the beneficiaries. You are seeing it from a beneficiary perspective. So you know, you get better information about where your patients are going. They establish metrics for you that are consistent with MIPS, which is what we get reimbursed for. So in not real time, but close to real time, your providers are being informed about pneumonia shots and flu shots and things like that, things that we're typically pretty far behind on. So, and it's all headed towards value-based purchasing, so that we can say that we're improving the health of the community because we're doing all these things, and they provide the report. They also do the reporting, the MIPS reporting for us. So, correct? Yes. All right.
Well, it's not MIPS then. We report through the ACO.
Okay.
And then strategy 3 is to develop the clinic facilities improvement plan. I think we've talked about the MAC, and you went through the MAC on Monday, and the Mediplex Dr. Well space, still work in progress there. And everything with the Radio Hill is complete, and we just heard about the 309 Mountain View. Strategy 4 is promoting our culture, and this is where Vicki Mitchell comes in with her Code of Excellence #2.
Right, and as you can see, marketing's done a great job focusing on respect this month, and a lot of employees engaged in this, which is really great. It's good to see familiar faces up there. We're also excited to see our first month's worth of data on the Press Ganey, because we are working on patient satisfaction scores, and different departments have identified areas in which to improve on that. So I think that should be coming out shortly, right, Mandy? Our first Press Ganey?
A lot of people have already looked at their data. Like you said in your report, they've been trained, but only by KVH. Press Ganey had many clients that came over from HealthStream, so they're struggling a little bit to keep up with training. So we've created our own. We've gotten started looking at it. We did get some of our first reports from Press Ganey for the HCAPS, the CG caps, I believe, and the ED. Those came out on the 18th, and once you've had enough data in there, but we've been able to pull some things. We're still working out some kinks with Press Ganey as far as how the survey is reflecting what we thought it would reflect. The questions being asked, the survey format, the way that we can look at data. So
just the clear definition of each question and how we can then improve that question. We were, as clinic management team, we were looking at ours and what is correlated to that question, and Amy did help kind of work with us on that. So what you might think is connected to that question isn't. So a lot of ours was around medical information. They didn't feel like the provider had enough medical information for that patient. And with certain visits, which makes complete sense because of our EHR implementations.
So that's like, once you have, the more data you get in there, the more they can correlate your overall score to specific questions that you're trying to look at. And so we're just starting to get some of those priority indices from Press Ganey now, so that leaders can focus even more on those individual things that would really help their patient satisfaction. So I think that's pretty exciting.
Yeah. That is our report for access. Any questions?
About Dr. Williams' space, so it's mysterious. It says on hold, the legal requested changes by prospective tenants. Will that bring in this paper to prospective tenants?
No, the prospective tenants are the ones that are in the shared space in the map that we want to use for rapid access and all that.
Oh, okay.
So I think all of them were near-term lease expiring, and I think Ron has them all persuaded to move in Nancy's old space.
Okay.
So there were just a few changes, cabinetry, lowering the counter kind of thing, and some of them had requested. So
is that the additional work to be used in space, or is there more?
So he didn't want to rework it. I mean, we were building out just generic space. These guys had just very few specific.
Well, nice.
Any other questions about access? Okay, thank you.
All right, so we move on to community engagement. Admin leaders, sponsors on that are Carrie Youngblood and myself, with Erica as the board sponsor. So I just wanted to call out on strategy 1, promote personnel health and well-being in the community. You'll see in the report we summarized in 2018 while we were waiting for the CHOD chip to be completed. We created our own calendar to try and do that and talked about some of the things that we have done. The chip has subsequently been released, and in case you hadn't seen it, I copied what their summary was and what they're moving forward with. So we'll look towards that as we create our 2019 calendar to accomplish these goals. I also wanted to call out on page 42, where we were talking about partnering with HD2 and the Public Health Department for a free flu clinic up in Cle Elum. That partnership, it was actually a very quick thing that we tried to pull together based on some feedback we were hearing from workers in Upper County. And it was done with the assumption that the Public Health Department had free flu vaccine for us. The good news is it was so popular at the clinic here in Ellensburg that they ran out. So unfortunately, we didn't have the vaccine to do the Upper County event. So we're not going to be able to do it at that time. I've been in communication with personnel from HD2, Medic 1, as well as Public Health Department, and say, okay, let's try and get something on the calendar for 2019 where we can really think about this and plan accordingly. So I just wanted to let you know.
When you say 2019, you mean the next flu season?
And or January, February, March. I mean, we kind of have to see what supplies look like and if the health department can get any additional free vaccine. But it's not just about the flu season either. It's what other types of needs are up in Upper County and how can we work together to address that.
Okay.
The other main issue that we had on strategy 1, we had talked about looking at the idea of a tobacco-free campus. So back in 2017, engineering explored the cost associated. There are a lot of ways we could go through this implementation. One thing that has been talked about is whether or not we want smoking shacks on property. At the time, this was the only property or main property, so that's something to consider. And so I included costs that were associated with that. And basically what we're asking at this point is direction from the board on, would you like us to proceed down this path to look at specific implementation tactics? This was the general overview of, there's lots of resources out there to do this. Many hospitals have done it. When this was very popular, probably 5-10 years ago maybe, there were health departments that did have funding to implement. I've reached out to Kittitas County, and unfortunately that's all gone away. The costs are really associated. We know that there would be costs with some signage, minimal cost, but you'd have to put signage up. We have to look at things at the campus as a whole. It's not just this main building. We have the MAC, we've got Radio Hill, we've got Mountain View. So these are all things we would need to take into consideration.
So if you have a smoking shack?
So one of the things, one of the biggest, I don't want to say, one of the worries, especially in an area like this, is if we make it a smoke-free campus, employees are going to look for a place to go. And the logical thing is the neighbors across the street. So, which you don't want to do, you want to be good neighbors. And so the smoking shack was more of an idea of, this is a safe place, and it tries to keep them away from the neighborhood.
No, I get it. My question is really just if there's a smoking shack on the campus, you can still go on a smoke-free campus.
That's a good question.
I mean, there's smoking on the campus.
I don't disagree.
Anyway.
So the last time we talked about this, and I think it was 2013, 12 or 13, one of the things that surfaced, there was a desire to do some smoking cessation classes and offering a benefit that way, but also a real concern about the security of our employees. We have to work 24/7. If we have employees who smoke, who go outside and we don't provide a safe environment for them to get lung cancer. we have some exposure there. So to your point, would it be a smoke-free campus? The answer is no. But it is considered sort of the safe and
I mean, are there, there could be half measures. I mean, I know people go out back sometimes.
Yeah, well, that's involved.
Yeah. And that's, I mean, that makes a lot more sense, but if there were to be a way to sort of keep them away from the patient entrance, I wonder if there would be a way to do that. I mean, I don't usually see employees out there, I usually see patients. Is there any way to sort of keep it so patients are not exposed to it, but, well, yeah.
That's entirely up to us. I mean, we can put signs out in front that say no smoking all over the front. In my experience, you either tell employees that they have to smoke in their cars, or visitors that they have to smoke in their cars, or you have people huddled on the corner of the sidewalk. And you're still providing ashtrays if you don't make your lawn littered with cigarette butts. So it really is acknowledging that somewhere these people have to go to smoke. And the issue if you make them smoke in their car truly is, if these are caregivers, they come back from that very enclosed environment smelling like cigarettes, and you will get comments from patients.
And if they are caregiving for children, likely in that class.
So I think what this group is looking at is, is this where you want us to spend sort of our time and our capital looking at moving to a smoke-free campus in 2019?
I mean, I'm thinking more about the person with an oxygen tank who comes in the front door and has to go through a gauntlet of people smoking.
Well, it's already illegal, 25 feet, within 25 feet of an entrance.
It's not that far.
No, it's not.
And people sit in that bench in front of the hospital. And we could put a sign on the bench that said, no smoking. And that would...
Could move the bench further away.
Out in the middle of the parking lot.
Put it on a tree or front.
I don't know, what are your thoughts on this?
I mean, I have an opinion. I think we should be smoke-free. I just feasibility, and I'm not really wanting to spend a whole lot of time or resources, going to smoke-free. I just think it does send a message that smoke-free campus type of thing. That people, they'll do what they have to do.
It's an addiction.
Roy or Eric,
I'm stuck in the middle too. I think that it's ideal, but how to enforce and how to declare smoke-free campus without being smoke-free assets. I mean, that is an option.
Mostly.
Yeah.
Mostly smoke-free, kind of smoke-free.
You have any thoughts, Roy? Seems like all four of us are completely on the fence. We think.
So we can table it and revisit.
Let's do that.
Okay.
I mean, because the county passed policy last year about vape.
What did they say about
The
it?
same policy as smoking.
Yeah.
About the 25 feet.
Unless you're a vape shop, and then you can sample it or something like that.
I mean, it sounds like the board
Plenty of vape
should
shops around.
I would like to say that there are employers, very large employers in Alaska Airlines is one, that employment is dependent on being tobacco-free. And I know that there are hospitals across the country where people are tested to ensure that they're tobacco-free to save employment. And so, I mean, that's something else to keep in mind as when we revisit this, whether that's something that we would want to do or not. And do we get, if we are tobacco-free, do we get any sort of insurance breaks?
So the only thing I'm aware of, and you get in, you cannot penalize an employee for being a smoker. What you can do is reward non-smokers. And you can do that through the premium that they share. So our pool, our rates would not be different, but we would be able to offer that percentage.
So non-smoking or tobacco-free, because there's chewing tobacco as well, they would pay a lower monthly premium.
If we chose to
If we
do
did that,
Yeah, that's, again, you can't penalize someone for doing it, but you can reward. That's the same facility.
That's just what you have to have a switch.
They did.
Wasn't it $50 a month or something?
25 and then the spouse and additional.
Yeah, I didn't see anything.
Do you have an estimate on the smokers on staff, or on,
That's an HR survey then.
I have not surveyed our staff for their tobacco utilization.
So I did wander out back door and sit down with folks and ask them to talk amongst the smokers about how they would respond to a policy like this, what would they want to see, would they take up smoking cessation, and they all went out and talked amongst themselves. I mean, generally we get the opinions of the non-smokers saying, yeah, make it smoke free. So I wanted to hear from the smokers, and this was some time ago. They all acknowledge that smoking is a bad habit, smoking is bad for them, smoking is an addiction. They're probably not going to quit just because we tell them to. So it's obviously not their first rodeo, but they thought through all this.
And Michelle, in years past, you said you've been through a transition and it was successful?
It was. It was a much smaller facility and it was a one-campus facility.
And did they have a shack?
No, but we did have a lot of neighborhood complaints.
Oh, okay, so that's
right.
Okay, lesson learned there. You consider the shack sort of thing.
Right.
Good neighbors, that's pretty important.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so yeah, we should.
I think it's a sensitive issue. I think
we'll come back to
at
that.
a future meeting.
Yep, at a future meeting. Let's take the can. All right.
Okay,
Go ahead.
so I'm going to talk to you a little bit about strategy 2. In quarter 3, we actually had one defined report out, so I'll talk a little bit about the Tiny Pulse results. In our report, we included some information that we reported out in Q2 around feedback. If you have questions about that, let me know. And then I'll talk about the third piece. We wanted to give you a little tidbit of information about something we'll be actually reporting out in Q4. So Q3 deliverable, report out of Tiny Pulse results, evaluate need for NBRI, and move forward. So I included some information in the report, just a little bit about the numbers, the utilization, what we have seen of that. The part that I really wanted to highlight that's not included in the report, you heard Manny talk a little bit about QAPI, and we are actually going to make a part of our anonymous suggestions and improvements from those anonymous suggestions a measured deliverable in our QAPI plan in human resources. So one of the pieces of moving to Tiny Pulse, while we're not seeing apples to apples results on utilization of it, it's a completely different animal when you look at the survey mechanism. One of the byproducts that we are seeing that we have not had the opportunity to really leverage are in these anonymous recommendations or suggestions. We went live, if you'll recall, with Tiny Pulse, I think the day after, before, right around go live of Cerner, and the first question was, I was satisfied. And
how happy am I?
Yeah.
Pretty fun.
You know, and at that time, the system itself has the capability of tracking these suggestions and actually posting back on this neat mechanism called the wall of wins. We have yet to be able to really leverage that just because we were preoccupied with a lot of other activities. And now we want to actually take some action on that to show that engagement back to staff that we're actually doing something, and we want to make it part of our quality improvement. So that was.
Do you think that the drop in response rate is it's okay because we have these other things that we're getting out of it?
No, I think it's just because they're so totally different. So NBRI was a one-time deliverable once a year, and it was pushed and promoted, and we rounded on it, and people were reminded about it, and had a very finite window of time for people to be able to get their one-time piece of information in. Now we're hitting people twice a month. Plus they can get in anytime real time and drop a suggestion. So we'd have to do some really creative data gathering to show an actual reflection of side to side. I don't even know if that's possible. Look at Jason. So I think it's just a completely different type of mechanism, and that's where we're seeing the difference in participation.
Okay.
I think it's also possible, given the way these are rolled out, that 23% represents a broad number of people in the organization, because it is out there every 2 weeks. So if you're not working when last month's came out, and it pops up this time, you may answer and have something to suggest.
But 23% doesn't represent the same 23%.
Right.
Right.
Cycling.
Right.
I think I'm in the 77%.
One thing I wanted to mention about what I appreciate about the Tiny Pulse, and especially its integration with the quality being measurable, is that NBRI, well, I think we got some important data from it. It seemed very removed. It seemed sterile. It seemed very distilled. And I think that Tiny Pulse has if people are realizing that it's an actionable device that they can have their concerns heard or their suggestions heard and change, improvements can be made based on it. I think that it's, to me, it seems like a much more valuable tool than NBRI. And when people answer the Tiny Pulse questions, when they realize that it's somebody here in the organization who is getting that information directly, and regularly, it just makes more sense to me.
I can see where a lot of the questions, people would say, oh, that doesn't really apply to me. Because I'm not in that,
So we received, someone identified through Tiny Pulse that there was not an AED on the second floor. There is now an AED on the second floor. We had a recent contribution from someone who said they frequently have visitors whose phones are running out of charge. And could we provide phone chargers? So Michelle was looking at a logo, a really reasonably costed.
They've been ordered.
Priced multi-prong charging that we can give to people when that happens. So it's great stuff, and they're great conversations, whether they're anonymous or not.
Speaking of that, it also knows that some organizations have a charging area. Do we have anything like that?
Like at the airport, that's a great
just a charging station like outside of imaging or multiple.
Have to get a Tiny Pulse. Answer
Right.
Yeah. Yes. There's a mobile app as well.
So how are the questions selected?
The questions were originally selected as an administrative group. So we took our questions from NBRI and said which of those are really the ones we want to move the needle on, and which from the baked-in questions that come from Tiny Pulse are similar. So we took those questions and deployed those first. Since then, it's been a probably more granular group. It's been with Human Resources and the CEO to go through and take a look at those questions. Tiny Pulse, as opposed to NBRI, is 100% customizable. So we can ask any question we choose to ask through it. You just may or may not get benchmark data back by modifying those questions too far.
Okay, one of the reasons I asked is because one of the measures in partnerships and collaborations have to do with development opportunities, and Tiny Pulse, but there hasn't been a question on that, so we could.
And I think, not to jump to their piece, but I think I was a part of that conversation, so I'll talk to it. I think we talked about trying to utilize another survey mechanism to get to that particular piece of information to leave Tiny Pulse intact specifically to the engagement pieces.
Okay.
But we have been able to ask things like, I'm proud to recommend KVH to my friends and family. Again, measuring that or mirroring that patient perspective.
Right.
But can you describe just briefly the wall of wins, how that works, how it's viewed?
Yeah, it's really cool. So we have, like I said, it's live in the system. We have yet to really leverage it. So it operates very much so like a social media platform, and employees are able to go in through their login, and they'll be able to click on a part of the ribbon at the top that says the wall of wins. So if a suggestion came in, we need an AED on the second floor, that suggestion would appear then in the wall of wins with the response and the actual outcome from that. And they would receive like a little trophy icon on their profile moving forward. So it's a piece to recognize and to also show engagement.
Are you able to award a trophy if it's an anonymous suggestion, or are they anonymous, or are they?
When they go to the wall of win, they move away from being anonymous.
Okay. That's nice. I like the recognition.
Right. Yeah. So I'm going to move off of strategy 2 unless you have questions about the other things. That was our only defined deliverable in quarter 3. Moving to strategy 3, be a strong community partner. We actually have a couple of things to report out in that. The first was, let me go in the order of the actual report itself. The first was something we were due to have reported out to you last quarter, and that was a report out of the current state of our students program. The second was the results of where we are with our hashtag 123 equity update. And the final being the results of the presence assessment that Lisa Potter's had an opportunity to do a lot of work on. So the student program, the point of having this assessment, to kind of do this gap analysis in a nutshell, is that by, I think, quarter 3, 2020, we want to have a forecasted, proactive student program, making sure that we are partnering with the right community learning institutions and really leveraging, especially that relationship with Central Washington University. To date, we've been able to really enjoy a passive relationship with learning institutions, them coming to us, and if we have room, we bring them right on in without kind of regard to need or recruitment or even space sometimes. So to be able to figure out where we were going, we just needed to do an assessment to see where we currently were at. So we took a look, there's a table embedded in here, took a look at the total number of schools in Washington State that have healthcare programs, or in Washington State, distilled that to those with healthcare programs, distill that again to those with healthcare programs related to us. If they had neuroscience or something, we weren't going to go down that path. And then how many of those schools do we currently have contracts with? And you can see there's a sizable gap there. So this information helps us to then be able to move forward. We just want to show you that bit of information.
Like 30 schools have, like, can you give us some examples of?
Central Washington University has a current contract with us. Wazoo has a current contract with us. YVCC, UW, I mean, there's more than that, obviously. Those are a handful I can think of off the top of my head.
That's a lot.
It is. And some of them we see really great rewards from, both in helping our clinicians keep their skills up to par. They really enjoy that interaction back and forth with the students because it helps them to think and learn what they're learning at the time. And sometimes it results in a hire, but other times it's the juice might not always be worth the squeeze. So we have these students coming here and they're enjoying a really great opportunity in learning, but our staff or KVH isn't always reaping that same reward. So really taking a more laser-focused approach of what has the best reward for both sides moving forward, and thinking ahead about those skill gaps, those educational changes. Like physical therapists are a great example. At one point they just required a master's degree, they changed to a doctorate program. There's a huge glut in the market for us to be able to recruit those, and we'll talk a little bit about that later as well. How do we as an institution keep ahead of that? How are we keeping a pulse on the educational programs that are in healthcare and understanding for everyone to see a shortage in staffing down the way because of it? So, first step. It's a lot of stuff. Hashtag 123 equity. Feels like it's a cheer. So, we were to report out to you, and this has kind of gone a little sideways. It started off as this big bang approach through WISHA and AHA, and it sort of dwindled down a little bit, and I reported that out last quarter. Basically, we need to, as an institution, really do some diving into getting some great data to figure out what we actually have for diversity across our patient population. That really truly is our first step, and then identifying what direction we want to go from there. This is a pretty sizable endeavor. So that's really what's to come. We will be doing some data digging on that, and then bring forward that data to figure which direction we go. Do you want to share anything for that, Erica?
I do. We sort of back up to, was it Chelan? When Flyer appeared on my table, and I thought, 1, 2, 3 for equity. Why not? Yeah, let's bring this back. Let's do it. Julie and I were gung ho, and it's a much larger nut to crack than, at least than I had anticipated.
All of us.
But it is important work, and I think that.
Who knew healthcare was this coming?
Right. So I think that one of the goals initially was to have KVH, the digital banner on, was it AHA or WISHA?
Right, to get an award, to get recognized.
Right, to have us up there. But recognizing that it's far more important than a banner, that it's going to take more effort than maybe I had anticipated. And so my apologies if I just
you love it. You love it.
Tossed all that.
Harry, do this.
Just do this.
But it is so important, and I really appreciate the sensitivity and the thoughtfulness that you guys are putting into creating a sustainable diversity program.
Right.
That's a great goal, that.
It is. And then the last piece that we were doing, this was our actual deliverable. This is the one thing we were supposed to do for you this quarter, was really to give you sort of the results of this community presence assessment. And as you recall, Lisa put together a really neat assessment tool that she was able to deploy to 26 different members within KVH really trying to get an understanding of where were we present in the community to then be able to use that as a platform of where should we be penetrating more deeply. She had two kind of main areas, professional and personal experience, and then access and influence. She put in the report, Lisa, who's sitting right here, put really good information into the report. Is there anything you want to share about it, or sorry to put you on the spot?
Since submitting that, so I haven't had a chance to go back to it.
I wrote the summary there, Karen.
No, there were some things that were surprising. I would have to go back and check the different categories, but of course not surprising. We have some access and influence around healthcare.
Go figure.
That's the thing that sticks out to me offhand.
But this will just help us to understand. We're looking at community engagement and community partnerships. Where are we currently, and where do we need to focus more energy or effort? So it was a lot of hard work, and I think gives us a good roadmap to start to plan to move forward. Questions about community engagement?
Thanks.
Thank you.
I just, every time I meet with you guys, the plan is fleshed out more and more, and
it started off rough at first, huh?
Some of it's so nebulous.
I know.
Get a handle on it. You guys have done a fantastic job.
Thank you. Good. Oh, am I up again?
Well, I mean, kind of. So, partnerships and collaborations, the board sponsors, Matt Altman and Rhonda Bolden and myself are the administrative sponsors. Strategy 1, support and develop a cohesive medical community. Our deliverable for third quarter was to report on the participation in M&M. And so I've added some stats there about how they've been doing this year. I believe the next M&M is November 9th, and I think they are potentially going to finalize a name change there. But we've had great attendance, and then there's already work underway for the 2019 Evidence-Based Medicine Conference. Make sure we capture more. Do you want to say anything about that?
We're planning that for March 29th and 30th. We're further along now than we were probably when I took on the CMO role last April. In terms of preparing for a March meeting, whereas when I came into the role, we were 2 months away from the June meeting. We are getting a lot of good feedback. We've also done some sneaky marketing things, like arranged to have the Physician Leadership Committee of the Washington Rural Health Collaborative have their in-person meeting here the evening of the 29th, so that they can come to the EBM during the day, have the meeting Friday evening, and then go to the second session Saturday. While I was supposed to be at a conference, I had an hour-long conversation with Dr. Guyette, and he's excited and looking forward to coming back.
Okay, so then strategy 2, which Carrie's alluded to already. Do you want to?
Sure. So invest in the well-being, development, and training of KVH employees. And it looks like in Q3 there were 2 report outs. One I kind of addressed. The second I will address more directly. That's the green one that says report to the board on evaluation of hard-to-fill positions. So we have the great fortune of receiving some data from, it's the healthcarecareercenter.com, which actually is a report put out by the American Hospital Association. And they go through all of the different positions, skills, that are the most challenging to recruit based on the average days posted. So we took that data and we played it against our own data from our applicant tracking system. Which of our opportunities or positions have we had posted forever and a day? So based on those 2 pieces of data and information, we were able to identify 10 of the most difficult to fill positions based on national and local information here. Those 10 positions are CS Tech, Clinic RN, Physical Therapist, Echo or Ultrasound Tech, MA, clinical informatics, MSW prepared social workers, MTs or MLT in the lab, patient care technicians, oddly enough, our NAC program, as well as our surgical technicians. So having now done this study, it gives us the opportunity again to take a look at where do we want to start devoting some of our development opportunities we talked about. Where does it make the most sense to offer development opportunities as tied to some of these positions? Is it something that we would look at maybe outsourcing with another partner like we did with the MA program? Is it something we would look at developing internal programs like an NAC program in-house that we might be able to fill our patient care technician positions quicker? Or is it something that we actually look at sending people off to go to school in the case of like physical therapists, that kind of thing? So any questions on that? Surprises?
I mean, that sounds like a great idea to target development opportunities to staff to start to fill positions.
The only thing I would say is about too, though, looking at Tiny Pulse, although they haven't asked specific staff development questions, we looked at the strategy too and said many of the questions have been about well-being though, and we could look at that a little bit also.
Or use a different tool. I mean, we can use another tool to get that specific question asked.
When you're looking at well-being, are you
how happy are you at work?
okay? So emotional well-being.
Yeah.
Okay, strategy 3 didn't have any specific deliverables. See collaborative relationships to expand and improve service offerings and keep care local. But as Julie mentioned, we've been identifying partners that will remain in the MAC, partners that will move out of the MAC and into Dr. Wells' space, and also thank you for approving the 309 Annex renovation for OT Speak. Super excited about that. Strategy 4, enhance relationships with strategic partners, such as Hospital District 2 and the Foundation. Again, just a real shout out to Lauren. She's done a lot of work with the new employee orientation and has just completely revised her presentation to new employees into a fun game where she actually has Monopoly money and lets people invest in the foundation. What would you give to? So she's really come up with some creative ideas on how to engage employees in that and help them think about giving and the ability to sign up to giving to the foundation, and also recognizing the foundation for their work. So just a kudos to her. And then you appointed a foundation board member to serve on the finance committee, which is also one of our deliverables. So there's actually been quite a lot of work going on around this particular strategy for this quarter. Looking ahead at fourth quarter 14, we highlighted in yellow the annual refresh of strategic goals, in particular because people do have different timelines for that. The foundation in particular doesn't refresh their strategic goals until January, so we wanted to make you aware of that in particular. Any questions?
Any questions? Thank you, Rhonda and Mandy. You are literally the best.
Right.
Don't put that.
That's the whole thing. I know. Roll into my stash. Be like, don't forget to Okay, so financial sustainability, board sponsors are Leona Armstrong and Roy also. And then administrative sponsors me, but I want to call out team members because we only have 2 strategies, and it's just a core team that meets every time. We try to meet every 2 weeks to work on things. And that team is Carrie, also Jason Adler and Lisa Potter are on that team. We had a couple of deliverables in third quarter. For the first strategy, maintain positive operating margin and strong cash reserves to maintain access to capital. Our first project was to develop indicators, new metrics to reflect true mix of revenue generating activities and overall financial position. We did not get those developed in third quarter. We're working to develop and identify those in the fourth quarter of 2018. However, as part of the CWAPI process, we identified that we are going to start publishing or implement a revenue cycle dashboard that will be available in probably early 19 at the latest, which will include key metrics around revenue cycle, which will measure timeliness of coding and billing, denial rates, and claim payment accuracy. So
that's great. That'll be very useful.
Yeah, I think so. It'd be really important because we need to keep our eye on that stuff constantly. Secondly, we had added this project on benchmarking. We wanted to benchmark charges, expenses, and productivity in kind of in support of the 2019 budget, but I will tell you we're in the budget process right now. I don't know how much can be folded in, but we did, in this area, we did review and select a benchmarking product. It was one that we had used previously, and previously it did not have data for the clinics, but now it does. So we're able to load data and compare to other organizations as far as costs, productivity, etc. We just signed the contract. I think Jason just received the specifications for the data loads today, or yesterday or today. So he'll be working on that kind of at the same time he's working on the 2019 budget. So he will be very, very busy. Yes. Working on this. So we're excited about this.
He has a cot in his office now, right?
We're putting a mercy bed. Yeah, we're putting a mercy bed. Yeah. Cubicle wall, yeah. Right. In fourth quarter, we are still planning to work on developing a long-range financial plan reflecting providers' capital facilities. A lot of that information comes out of some of the other groups and some of our other plans, so we do plan to do that. Under the strategy, be adaptive and responsive in order to grow our market share. The key deliverables in that were to develop, in the second quarter, develop an evaluation tool for new services or changes to existing. We actually developed an evaluation process, and we've been working over the last several meetings to refine that process. And in your packet, you have the kind of the graphic of what that process looks like. We chose to do that rather than a tool because a tool implies it's a specific template with always the same variables, and the kinds of projects that we're working on have very different parameters around them. So it made a lot more sense to do more of a process flow, a certain process. We also have in your packet a tool or a process that was developed for a service line review, and that process was followed when the team did the 9-month review, although I think it's a 12-month review of workplace health. And you will be seeing that actual presentation of what that review looks like under old business later in the agenda. But these were the processes that were developed by the team. Any questions?
I think that's an excellent idea, the process, and I appreciate that you have to have all apples or all oranges to have a tool. And that's simply not what we have.
We spent a lot of time, would you agree, refining both of these things. So we're anxious to see how you think when you actually see the review, if you feel like that's appropriate. Another deliverable we had in strategy 2 was to identify grant and other funding sources for programs and major infrastructure. I mean, we have Lori now who's doing a lot of grant writing. We have not really looked at what we would do in this area, but we'll certainly see if there are some additional things that we could do to support that. Okay?
Any questions? Thanks to all of you for all the work on this third quarter report. Looks like it's clear that you put a lot of effort into it. We appreciate it. One of the things I talked about with Rhonda and Mandy was that we're happy to receive sort of feedback from you guys if you think that things need to be sort of tinkered with, you know, on the strategic plan and some of the deliverables. So if there's any kind of feedback you have for us, you shouldn't feel like this is kind of straight jacket. So if there's any movement that needs to take place, we're happy to hear that in your reports. So feel free to give us some feedback on that. And we will sort of review the strategic plan as a board, I think, in early next year in January, along with, it sort of fits the timeline for when the foundation reviews their strategic plan. Great. Any last minute questions about the strategic plan report? All right. Thank you. Thanks to all of you again. All right. On to the Chief of Staff, Dr. O'Brien.
Okay, yeah, we have 9, we have 10, but we have 9 on your list. Jeffrey Grossman, initial appointment, direct radiology, has a totally clean record. We have 2 new PAs coming here. Anna Parr and William Phillips, both coming from, I think, South Carolina or North Carolina. And both new grads with excellent recommendations. Those are the initial appointments. Joanna Carson is a reappointment for direct radiology, under associate status. And we have 5 allied health professionals working: Laura Gorham in pediatrics, Jim Repture in orthopedics, Pat Burley in the ED, Brett White, family medicine, Ellenberg, and Rhonda Ram in the ED. And these all have no reason to, well, we're recommending approval of all of our applications, requests for privileging.
Okay. Yeah, I think the board had a couple of questions about this, so I think we're going to discuss a couple of these in executive session, and then we will vote after we come out.
As I said, yes, there's one other that we need to discuss.
Yeah. I did have one quick question before that. I noticed this time there were a couple, like one was contingent on the receipt of peer references. One had, and maybe you could explain to me what this is.
Oh, yeah.
They need to be the PALS.
Oh, yeah, BLS, basic life support, certifications.
One of them needed that, the other one needed
PALS, pediatric advanced life support.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, there's several that needed basic life support.
Yeah.
And these are just certifications that have just lapsed. And they're all, anyone be reminded that they need to keep up with them. Then the problem comes up to recertify, then often we need to wait for an opening in a class. To be able to get, like, for instance, I've had basic life support. You know, it's $10. But I scheduled in November in a class to do it. So those are, we always allow lapse or gaps in that field of certifications to allow people to come into compliance to get scheduled.
So we would approve them and then just with the assumption that there will be a grace period and they can complete those.
Right. Yeah, that's been our policy all along, is to have grace periods on certifications.
And so is that something the NEC then keeps an eye on?
The medical staff coordinator
Medical staff
keeps track of all that.
Okay.
And if people don't recertify after being notified within a reasonable length of time, then they're sent another letter.
Right. Okay.
The other question, though, the 2 period references that weren't really, it turns out that the reason was is that they were graduating in the Carolinas when the hurricane struck. So the 2 people, the second and third peer references were separated from their professional practice places and were late getting their responses back in. And I think they got back in eventually, since this was written.
All right.
But the other one response we did have was from the program director that said that this was an excellent student, and we would be very fortunate to have her under the usual PA supervision.
Yeah. Okay. So we will vote on this later, but are there any questions at this point just about it? Okay, thanks for sticking around. Okay, next, Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Martin.
And a brief report. Recruitment is ongoing, and Mitch continues to do yeoman work. We had an obstetrician that has made a couple of visits in the last couple of weeks since I wrote this. As I'm scanning down the list and hearing the Carolina story, Mitch was interviewing one applicant in South Carolina as the hurricane hit, looked out his window and saw his chimney collapse while he was on the phone. It's humbling to think things we take for granted. Lisa is continuing to work with county and the residents at CHCW and trying to work out a plan where we can support corrections and what that might look like. We're thinking that might be a moonlighting opportunity for the residency that we just facilitate, mainly because it's a service to the county, people of the county. We've talked with a couple of telepsych vendors to provide services. It's interesting. The economics of that service line is going to be challenging.
What is that?
So the current business model for telepsychiatry support is that you contract to pay an amount for their services by the hour, somewhere between $180 and $250 an hour. At Medicare fee-for-service reimbursement, most of those services pay about $104 an hour. And their model is you contract with us, and we do the work, and you can bill for our services, and you keep the loss and profit. And so obviously it's a viable business model because it's been successful, and I just have reached out to one of the vendors to get an understanding of how these services are being paid. One potential is that if they are in fact being paid at rural reimbursements, then it's a completely different economic argument, and we just need to figure out if that's the case. In front of you, you have, and Lisa, you're going to be presenting, or not?
More myself.
Yes.
Yes.
Could you charge a facility fee for some of those?
The facility fee, in terms of just looking at the codes, the facility RVU is trivial. There is a $25 fee that you can charge for origination of a telepsych encounter, but that still doesn't come close to making the numbers balance. I mean, a 1 hour psychotherapy session is 3 work RVU, and Medicare pays $36 per work RVU. So there's clearly more to this than meets the eye, and I spoke with one of the vendors last week and should have something to help explain how they're, but the first email I saw from him, their reimbursement specialist went through and said, yes, it's 3 work RVU.
I think you're being optimistic. I think the fact that you is as long as it's and that's one of the reasons, and psychiatrists are not particularly well compensated either for whatever reason you would think that the shortage of that would start to change.
Well, it has, and it's following free market economics. One of the groups that I reached out to was UW to see if, because they actually have on their website that they offer telepsych services. And when I spoke to them, they said, we should probably take that down because we really don't have the capacity for that. We're down to 1.2 full-time faculty in the Department of Psychiatry. And the reason for that is because all of their faculty have gone into private practice it's cash only. They charge $400 to $450 an hour. And in the long term, that may help create more demand for psychiatrists, but it's not going to do anything to address the needs of the rural population. So it's been kind of a fascinating exercise into one of the areas where our system, where our disease treatment industry is collapsing, frankly.
Is there room for allied health personnel in that kind of field?
There is, and for instance, Orrin O'Connell at Family Medicine Cle-Elum has a doctorate of nurse practitioner or nursing practice, and with an emphasis in psychiatry. And he's a very solid provider. My experience over the years has been that there's a lot of variability in training, and in particular, the kinds of backup that we need for our most complex patients, the ones that are the biggest challenges for us in our primary care clinics, are probably better addressed by a psychiatrist.
But that being not available, essentially. And clinical psychologists?
Clinical psychologists in, I believe it's 16 states, have the ability to prescribe. Washington is not one of those states and hasn't really made significant motion towards becoming one of those states. It's a challenge nationally. If memory serves, the last I looked, there were 270 members of the Washington State Psychiatric Association, as opposed to roughly 3,500 members of the Washington Academy of Family Physicians. That's not a lot of manpower to cover a state. And 90% of those providers were located in King County or Thurston County. So when we're talking about, the reason that there is telepsychiatry is because it's an incredibly scarce resource. And Julie may be right. It may be that we have to, after a lot of research, decide, is this just something that is sufficiently pressing a need that we need to accept that it's a service that will offer and a challenge to come up with a business model. I'm loath to make that suggestion. But I also know.
Talk about the rural health clinics to solve that problem. I mean, if we're getting encounter rates rather than fee-for-service rates.
Well, and quite frankly, at that point, then do those hourly fees, which also include things like case conferences with providers, potentially education, do those become costs? So there's a lot more to learn here. We're also looking at pulmonary rehab as a service line that you'll be hearing more about coming down the road, and we've had some preliminary conversations again about swing bed units. All of which has landed in Lisa's lap. And in her free time, yeah, great. Susan has been working on 10 new appointments, 10 reappointments, and a student. In addition to that, work I continue to be involved with Greater Columbia Accountable Community of Health, which now would like that our acronym to be pronounced GCASH. And they are trying to fund projects as quickly as they can. They had targeted $49,000 for Kittitas County to address social determinants of health. A week or so ago, that amount increased to over $100,000.
What was that increase?
They got more money.
Now, this particular phase is January 31st. It's just the same.
And additionally, because we've been selected to partner with them, they will be providing staff and expertise to facilitate the creation of patient-centered medical home in our clinics. That also comes with a monetary sum to support staffing on our side, and I'm blanking on the number. I want to say it's $44,000 per.
No, it's $440,000. I left that.
That's the total. It was 149.
Yeah, that's what we talked
149
about
per clinic.
last month. I think you were at the kickoff to that.
Yes.
That's why you weren't here.
Which is, I now have a house with it. Their theme is practice transformation. So every time you go to one of these things, you leave with a bunch of transformers. Of note, the person who is the lead for this, for the ACH, was previously the lead in practice transformation for Caravan ACO. So that we can expect that we'll be looking at similar models and some synergy. Any questions?
I do. Yeah, you mentioned visits, OB/GYN visit. Is that one person, two visits, multiple people, one visit?
One person, multiple visits.
Promising?
Most recently, yes. All of the providers currently at Women's Health is now candidate and are fairly enthusiastic.
And Mitch was also working with locums.
I'm sorry, who?
Mitch.
Oh, gotcha.
The other thing that's worth calling out in terms of that is Merritt Hawkins is the largest physician recruiter in the country and the most expensive, but they had a little slip up with a candidate that they provided us 3 years or so ago, who after we paid them was discovered to be unemployable in the state of Washington. And so they owe us a doc, so the bill was worked for free. And there's been a recent change in staffing there. And when the current staff came in and found out how long we've been carrying a credit, they have bumped us to the other lines and are aggressively working to get the candidate.
Anything else from Dr. Thank you. All right, the CFO report. Libby?
You know, the births that we didn't see last month, they all came in September. 41 deliveries, I think. That were really busy. Yeah, we're popping. Yes.
Were they evenly distributed?
No, I think he was saying they all come in clumps, right?
They come 8 a day.
8 a day.
Like grapes.
And then
Like
nothing.
grapes.
Right. So that, no, they were not easy.
That's not good, yeah, the patient care.
I'm looking at Vicky. Yes, but she mentioned this the other day, they didn't all, they're not even distributed. So some pretty busy times, yes. So as you saw, we did have a bit better month than August. A couple things that influenced we had strong volumes in certain areas, but also as we go through this revenue review process on a weekly basis, and in our working with the clinics, we identified some charges for surgery assists that we had not billed, and so we billed we've got $400,000 worth of surgery assists in the month as well. And I'm mentioning that because you'll see that in the clinics as you look at how well the clinics did for the month. Their loss was $21,000 as opposed to the budgeted $252,000. The other item you'll notice is that urgent care it looks like they had a gain, and they're at $111,000 positive. The reason for that is that we moved the subsidy from District 2, we moved out of the hospital side and took it down so that it's directly offsetting the loss in urgent care. So they have now booked $163,000 of subsidy, so that has brought the year-to-date loss for the urgent care clinic down to $108,000. So.
That reminded that loss is something we expected. How much
For urgent care, we had historically we had a loss of urgent care, and then there was a change in the amount of contractual adjustment that was being booked there. It lowered that contractual adjustment, which made you know, it made it a little easier for them not to have a loss. They haven't had this significant of a loss. Even with that change in the contractual adjustment, it's up this year, no loss, so.
Previously, we had to estimate the contractuals there, now with Cerner, it actually books the actual contractual urgent care, so we had a false positive.
Yes, for a couple of years. And we've made District 2 aware of that. We are asking for them to recognize and change the amount going forward that they will subsidize for the loss. Because they have tied their subsidy, they've agreed to increase their subsidy each year by the same percentage that our lease expense increase. And then they stop doing that when they're no longer seeing to be a subsidy required. So we proposed this to them, and we'll be, before the end of the year, hopefully getting them to agree to increase it, which I think at this point would bring it up to about $185,000. You notice that the accounts, the AR days, ended the month at 99, which was pretty frightening. The days cash on hand also went down, which again, those are always, you know, inversely related.
Can you explain that?
The 99?
Yeah.
Yes, I can.
I mean, it's really not funny, but
well, no, it is not funny. I can explain it though. On the coding side, we touch the claims much more than we used to. On the billing side, we touch the claims, we manually touch all of the claims multiple times. So a system that, you know, hopefully will be automated where we can trust what's being posted in terms of payments, etc. It doesn't work 100%. So we have to go through and check it all. And that's what
is this indefinite?
Pardon?
Indefinitely, you're gonna have to?
No, we will not have to do it indefinitely. With, I think what Julie mentioned, the re-engagement of the Cerner people, they've actually identified it within the last 2 days. There have been people contacting us that are experts in the revenue cycle side. They've already identified some solutions for some of the problems we have. Some of it is actually how things were set up, and that we weren't aware of choices we had in the setup, which I don't think is unique to revenue cycle. I think the same thing exists in some of the other areas. But the problem is with this, if it's not working, we can't get them through the system. There's a log jam. So what we have people in the billing office authorized to work overtime to try to get through these so they can clean up the claims so that we can send them out, you know. We also have some extra resources in the coding side to get the coding taken care of. Again, I would like to tell you that it won't go above 99, but I'm not going to do that. I think it's possible that it'll be higher when we close the month of October. But if you look at the cash, I've given you an updated cash receipts. We are saying that by the end of November, we would expect to be in a better position, that we would have it 90% resolved.
So the legacy money's gone, it's still Cerner now.
It's Cerner. It's pretty much Cerner. We have a small amount of legacy, but very little.
Legacy
Very little.
crept up a bit in September compared to
The
August.
legacy collections.
Yeah, is that just a strong push to clear those?
That, but also with the legacy, we build, we're getting responses back from the insurance company. We made a rebilling, and so there's kind of a timing thing there. Yes, but we did get a little more in the month of September. The Cerner, if you'll notice though, the Cerner payments were actually down too, the cash collection. We've been looking at them I've been monitoring it this month. They're up slightly. When I looked at it earlier in the week, they're up slightly, but they're not back up to the 200 yet. So.
What would you expect the accounts receivable to be once all the issues are taken care of, cleaned up?
Well, what we would want it to be is 45, 46 days.
Is that reasonable to achieve that with our system?
I believe so, yes.
Good.
Yes, I believe so.
So do you have a follow-up question to that? Do we have a timeline as to when we might
get back to that?
Yeah.
I would target it sometime in 2019.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not, I could tell you in a year, but I don't think that's reasonable, you know.
So let me give an example of what Libby is talking about. There's a file called the 835 file.
835 file.
835. It comes in, and the way it comes in from the payers, and the way it hits the system right now, we should be able to set that into the system and send those applications. So insurance is paid, it's distributed to contractual, and says this is the amount that you owe. We don't trust that file. It's not been set up initially correctly. So the risk there is we're going to, every single claim is going to go applications, or far too many are going to go applications with phone numbers on it. Right. So those billers are having to go in and go, this one's right, this one's wrong, what's happening here? What we discovered, and this back and forth has been going on for a very long time, is that we were told up front that sort of this is just the way it is and you can't change it. And in fact, now we're learning that we can. We need to go through and see which codes we want to do what and redistribute that so that we have some, and then test it so that we have some faith in the way that that file is actually being applied to our patient accounts. But that's an example of the kind. We have similar problems on the private pay side. So, we try to get those to the third party so that they can work them, but we have similar concerns about the quality, the way that is being distributed as well.
Any other questions?
So the risk of running along, I mean, other than not being able to realize
The risk of what?
running along with the, I mean, if we get up to 100 and let's just 100 other than not having those funds available, is there a risk beyond that they won't be captured?
Depends
Because
on
of the
if we pass the time of filing of the claims to the insurance company. We actually have pretty good, pretty generous timelines with many of our payers. We have a few payers that have a very short timeline. We've identified those payers, our coders are aware of those payers, and our billers are aware of those payers. But absolutely, the longer, and if you have people focused on the old things, you're not getting the new things out, perhaps we don't have the data, to show what's transpired in the clinics because we haven't been able to build the current stuff. So, but yes, that we're trying to guard against missing the timely deadlines for filing.
And we can preserve our privilege to receive those funds if we get at least an initial claim sent out?
Yes, if we get an initial claim sent out, and if it comes back and gets to be worked, that clock stops. Yes.
The other thing, though, you do a real disservice to your patients when you drop in April bill in the mailbox in February. And that's what it is.
Any other questions?
I mean, as pressing as our cash on hand days are going down and our accounts receivable is going up, the clinic visits is year to date, I mean, close to 6,000
Thank you
visits.
for pointing that out.
And we won't talk about the total loss of the
No,
clinic.
we won't talk about that. No. We can stop right where
But it is a good discussion on the streets as far as like people saying, I can get in now.
Yes.
I do hear that.
I also hear a lot about us being out in the community.
Mhm.
I hardly knew you were there before, and now every
Yes.
time you turn around, it's like,
Well, that's worth a few days cash on hand.
Already.
No, maybe.
Well, remember your passage of some of the refinancing and the debt to repay that building, and you know why we did it.
Yeah.
We did it so that we would be able to weather this.
Yeah.
And we are, I mean, even with 144, we're way above most critical access hospitals in terms of days cash on hand. Now, I wouldn't say the same things of ARDs. That's not a good comparison, so. But we are aware that people are working hard to deal with it. We've got some other resources, and I think some of these additional resources now are helping us actually see things that we've been told, no, you can't do, and actually we can. So.
Additional questions? All right, Leon's not here. Roy, do you have anything to say about that?
Yes, I guess I'll be the avatar for Liana and the Finance Committee report. A couple of things about membership on that committee, and then I also want to bring up a couple of capital expenditure requests. We've had a couple members of that committee who are highly qualified. They have expertise that is extremely useful to the proceedings of the Finance Committee, but they tend to live half the year in Ellensburg and half the year in sunnier, warmer climes, and that really does kind of play havoc with the continuity and the kinds of discussions that can occur from one meeting to the next. So we've cycled off a couple of members of that committee and brought a couple of new members of that committee on board. And just a quick word, you've already heard about one of them, but Deborah Bezona is a former entrepreneur and a local investor who lived for a time in California as well as Bainbridge Island, and has been in Ellensburg for several years. And she's a member of the Ellensburg Business Development Authority as well as the leadership Kittitas County class of 2008. So she kind of brings a new perspective and somebody who has dealt with situations, I guess, on a consulting basis with customer satisfaction. And so there are times when you get into some of those kinds of discussions, and she's got an interesting perspective on that. The other member was mentioned earlier, and that's Jerry Greb, who is a principal with Greb, Johnson, Reed, and Locksmith. And he's originally from Quincy, a WSU graduate in accounting and business administration, and he's lived in the area about 40 years. And I think more importantly, he's been on the foundation for KVH for a number of years and has served as the treasurer of the foundation board. And he's agreed to come on to the board, and in fact attended the first meeting this Tuesday of this week. So the new members, I think, really are going to help us in terms of that continuity that occurs from one month to the next, and we don't encounter that kind of problem with where are the board members when, in a sense, we need a full complement of people evaluating everything from accounts receivable to cash on hand, things of that nature. So that membership, we may still bring on one or two more, but at this point, those are the two new members. We've got two capital expenditure requests and a third that's going to be deferred, and I'll say a word about that in a minute. So I'm going to go ahead and bring those two forward. Both of these have been recommended by the Finance Committee. The first one is a capital item related to sterilization containers, and there's a description in your packet about that. And the cost, actual cost on this is $30,304. So the Finance Committee recommends approval of this particular item.
Okay. So are these just plastic tubs?
You saw the little video, did you not?
Okay. Oh dear. Yeah. No.
They're rigid.
Steady. So the sterilization containers, any additional questions about that request? All right, and hearing none, motion to approve. All right, second from Roy. Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor of approving the capital expenditure request for the sterilization containers, please say aye. Aye. Unanimous. Second one, Roy?
Second one is the Medical Arts Center external signage, and the rationale is indicated below, and the actual cost $44,873. Michelle, did you bring those?
I did.
Poster?
I did.
The poster that she had from Monday night was useful in terms of kind of giving a visual representation of external signage on the building and the front of the building.
Is the building already wired for the facelift signage? No. And that's included in?
It is.
Yes.
It is now, yes.
It's in the 44?
Yes.
And the monument sign, sorry,
No, that's right.
My understanding is the electric can be brought in, will likely not be brought in until the ground thaws. Correct. But that cost is in there as well. Correct.
And this side, which is the east side of the building, would bring it up into some DSHS space, so we wouldn't be able to do the electrical work on that until after the first of the year. And so we would work with the signage company to see whether or not we should wait on that side to do it all at the same time. So that's something we just have to have a conversation. The other thing that will happen like this will actually say East Jackson Avenue.
So face lit, that's not something shining onto it, but the face is actually lit from behind. Correct. So illuminated. That was really nice.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dana.
You're welcome.
All right, so the second capital expenditure request for external signage for the MAC. Any questions? All right, motion. All right. Moved by Roy, second by Erica. Any additional questions? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Unanimous, thank you.
There, just as a FYI to the board, there was a third capital expenditure item, and this is having to do with the KDH main entrance reader board that is going to be considered at some point this next year for $73,718 at this point in time. We're not asking for approval at this time, but will be presented sometime in 2019.
So
Board outside.
the idea behind this would be at the main entrance of the hospital where there's currently the blue sign that just says, main entrance, emergency. This would bring a 10-foot sign. We would have some height on it. It would say the same things. We would also add 24/7 pharmacy to it. And it would be have an electronic reader board in the middle that we could do rotating messages on to the
And
public.
by reader board, this is a digital sign.
Not
So you-
scrolling word.
Correct. You can advertise, you can adopt, you can do, I believe this is my request, I was told no. But in discussing it, we just really felt, given the financial situation right now, it was going to send the wrong message. And it's certainly a luxury. I do think it's a very effective tool to let your community know about new doctors that are coming on, new services, and things that you're having, and things like that.
Thank you for clarifying. I thought you were saying that we were going to replace a reader board, and I wondered how I could miss that. All these years. That makes sense, and I would like to see that at some point.
Yeah. They did it really nice.
Okay.
Thank you, Roy. All right, on to operations.
Hi. So my report's on page 68. It's more or less the highlights in the clinical areas, including food and nutrition. Don't really have anything to add to that, other than that it was a very busy month last month, both in the family birthing and the surgery departments. Might add in the wound care division, we are lacking an RN. We're vacant an RN in that position, but I must say that team has pulled together and they are just working reams even without the RN. Mary Nowens, our provider, is doing a lot of she's an ARNP, which gives her the same ability to do the nursing piece, so she's really stepped up and done that as well. So they're continuing to receive lots of patients.
So you say 4 to 6 per day for 4 hours.
Right, in that 4-hour time
Right,
slot.
4 hour time. So
Yesterday,
yesterday
they saw 7, and they've been pretty much booked 7 most of the week. I just heard when I made rounds yesterday.
So you say they're continuing to work on efficiency. What's the goal? What's normal?
The goal is to have your patient come in, get roomed right away, and then the RN or the LPN would do their vital signs, check them in, de-dress them, and make the wound right accessible to the provider. When she walks in, she can just do her assessment and start right away without any lag time. And so the provider would go into the room, do the assessment, manage the wound, and then give her orders. She would leave and then be available to see the next patient who is waiting.
So what would be how many patients in a 4-hour clinic would you expect?
It depends on the average visit. The new visits are somewhere from an hour to an hour and a half, because you have to initially set up their care plan. Some of them are only half-hour visits, some of them are an hour, so it just depends on the wound and what the treatment is.
But ideally, they would overlap because...
Correct. You'd have one waiting and then have it so your provider could go directly from one room into the next.
The service line will be featured in an upcoming story next month.
I'd like to call out your comments about the cafeteria and the efforts made towards improving staffing, especially how it affects employees and being able to have consecutive days off. I think that speaks volumes.
Jim's done a great job, and that staff there is really just kind of right on board. They had been working with 1 day off. They'd work like 5 days, be off 1, work another 4, and be off. And now he's got 2 days off in a row. Their hours were anywhere from 6 hours to 7.5, and so now he's got them on 8 or 10 or 12-hour shifts, and they're really liking that because they've got a work-life balance now more so than they do.
And also kudos to the cafeteria. I've been getting some attention on social media. People saying that they like to come to the hospital. You really have no reason to be here except for the cafeteria. Salad bar especially is getting a lot of props from the community. So that's always nice to see.
Yeah.
Any questions for? All right, thank you very much. Next is Ron Bull.
Yeah, my report is on page 69 and 70, and I really don't have anything to add unless you have questions.
A question about, and I thought there was something in here, the closure of the FME lab, migration of that FTE over here at the main hospital. There will be lab services at the MAC. Will that end up being another?
We'll do some very specific point of care testing there that we have to have for the rural health clinics, and anything else will be sent either to the main hospital or to our reference lab. So we will have staff there available to perform simple testing and draw blood, collect specimens.
One of the things we know from our relationship with community health is that once the patient leaves the clinic, non-compliance goes up. So if you can get them to get a blood drawn or get them to leave a sample on their way out, just as it's ordered, then they're far more compliant than they are if they get in their car and strap the baby in the back seat, go to the grocery store, and then have to come to the hospital and do that kind of thing. So hopefully we'll have that.
And the patients who were served formerly over at FME will still have phlebotomy to
Some of the MAs are trained in phlebotomy, so they can do that. And if the patient isn't able to travel to the hospital, we'll certainly send someone over to draw their blood. If they need a stat test, we've created a mechanism for the front registration to recognize that somebody's waiting on this result and put them to the front of the registration line or the front of the lab draw line. So we're working on that. It's just been a week, so we're still seeing how it goes.
What will happen with that space? I mean, that was a fairly large space, the lab space.
Yeah. Everybody's eyeballing it
I
right
think
now.
Yeah, We still will use it for backup for some of our instrumentation, so we'll still do quality controls on it just in case some equipment goes down in the lab until we make, more decisions about what we do overall with the lab services.
Any questions? Thank you. Thank you for your report. Next up, Carrie Barr, Bank Operations.
Yes, I do not have anything to add to my report, but I'll take any questions that you might have.
How are the girls going? Like, code blue girls, are they going well?
Oh, yeah, it went really well. We actually had an employee from quality that played the code blue patient. Yes. She enjoyed it. Yeah.
And how often?
Okay.
How often do those drills happen?
We haven't done it on a regular case. This was the first time that we've ever done it, and it really came from a situation in which we had an actual event at the clinic and realized that this was probably the first time, or it was the first time for some of our MAs, the newer MAs, that we had seen something like this happen. They acted appropriately. They were guided by providers. We had a debrief afterwards and made some adjustments to what our checklist is now by our AED, those types of things. But thought this would be a really good opportunity to just start doing these, so it is that muscle memory.
On that Ellensburg School District grant, has it started now?
That starts at the first of the year.
First of the year, okay.
And could you explain to me what exactly it's for? You said no cost training and evidence-based training?
Yeah, so this is all about mental health training, so mental health awareness training, and really being able to get not only the mental health professionals trained, but the people surrounding those patients. So a lot of times we'll have our parents call and talk with our nursing staff, and they don't have that adequate training, and so this will allow that training to happen for not only KVH, but for all of the community members that sign up to be partners to this.
So it's like identifying symptoms of depression or isolation and recognizing that in others and
what the spikes are and triggers could be.
Nurses are required to have suicide prevention.
RNs are, but a lot of the times you'll have the MAs dealing with them when you're checking them in, so it's really important to get that. That's not, and they also are going to the school level and talking to peers and how do other students start seeing that with their friends.
Any questions?
Comment. Am I saying this right? Healthy Life?
Healthy Life, we have an app.
Big high five on that. I have been wanting an app for this organization since before I was on the board.
I know, it's on our strategic goal for 2019, so basically access next.
I mean, it's just so quietly placed in there. You are so bad.
But that is Cerner. That's
a Cerner product.
It's the Cerner app. You go in and it says, "Welcome to KVH Healthy App," and you can even select to go to the KVH Facebook page right from that app. So it's a Cerner app, but it appears to be a KVH. Yeah.
Nice. It's just so inconspicuously added in there. Like
bigger font with flashing
lights. That's great. That's great. Is there any way to track how many people, how many patients have access to
some data on that?
That'd be great. It's good to have.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Carrie about the report or the dashboard? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, community relations report. Michelle.
I just wanted to add a couple of things. Did anybody notice the flags when you came in? Okay. Yes. so those are up and exciting. The other thing that I wanted to call to your attention is you may or may not have seen a story we released today on the gift shop and the history of the gift shop with the auxiliary and Donna taking the lead on that. So that one came out today, and next month we are going to be inviting the auxiliary members to come at the beginning of the board meeting, just for us to say thank you for all of their years of service. And we have a plaque that will go into the pathway out in the Rose Garden. So I just wanted to give you a heads up on that. And then the other new thing that we are trying, and I just noticed there was a typo on the very last item on the horizon. It should be a healthy meal preparation and dinner. What we're doing for November is, instead of going out with our KVH in the community series to Hal Holmes or up to Upper County, we actually looked at saying, okay, we're entering the holiday season. How can we help our diabetic patients learn to make a healthy meal and enjoy it? So we pulled some diagnostic codes thanks to the help of Dr. Martin, and sent very targeted invites to about 300 people, saying we would like you to join us for dinner, and are inviting them into the cafeteria where Jim and Nicole, our dietitian, we'll have a meal there ready for them, and walk them through how to prepare that and send them home with some recipes and answer questions and things like that. And so we're really curious to see how the community is going to respond to that and how that works, and hope to be able to do more things like that in the future.
That's great. I worked very well that one. I mean, these are the things that we brainstormed,
Exactly.
items like this.
Yeah. It's fun to see them come to fruition. Any questions for me?
That addresses the sort of population health.
Exactly.
I saw in the paper an advertisement for the pharmacy trying to capture maybe some of the people in
We were trying to be very respectful.
Respectfully.
If they're gone, it's not bad. Anyway, questions? Any additional? Any additional questions?
Well, once again, thank you for this conversation.
Okay.
I forgot to mention, I had an opportunity to interview a strong CFO candidate, and we will see in the process coming through next week. And as I mentioned before, CIO candidates, we seem to have some good things.
Thank you.
The CFO position, is that permanent or temporary?
Okay. So, next, nothing under education. Board reports, under old business, workplace health review. That's you.
Yeah, so I can kick us off. So this is the handout that you have in front of you. This is our very first KVH service line review. So we're really excited to have this format to see what you think. We're just going over, taking a high-level look at our what type of business we thought we were getting in, what type of business we ended up in, what financial information we might review with you, as well as just some highlights about successes and challenges and plans for the future. So, okay, that said.
Well, in an effort here not to read this entire document to you, I'll just go over it at a high level. If you have questions, please just let me know as we go. You'll remember our go-live date was September 11th of 2017, so just over a year ago. And in that past year, we have been able to create service protocols for 54 different organizations within Kittitas County, a couple outliers that are not in Kittitas County that choose to travel here. I want to emphasize, though, that the 54 organizations that we have service protocols for does not even capture all of the companies that send sort of one-off employees through our clinics constantly. So these are not the only organizations we work with. These are just the ones with the highest number of employees that frequent the clinics, so they have specific protocols for them. The industries that we're touching range from government industries to private businesses. In terms of the mix of business, we knew going into this that workers' comp injuries, L&I claims would comprise a significant portion of the business, but what we found was that it's much, much higher than we even estimated. So I think that's really good news. There was a lot of emphasis placed on the transferring of open claims in our primary care clinics. And in doing that, I think it helped open a little bit of access for our primary care providers, as well as funnel business towards our new service line, which was nice. And then Ryan R. Our PA over at Workplace Health did a lot of work around educating the ED staff so that we're getting a lot of referrals over at Workplace Health for follow-up care for those people opening their claims through our emergency department. The volume assessment table that you see here just kind of shows the numbers so you can see workers' compensation, how much higher we are than we predicted. And then we have lots of room to grow in the employer-related services, regulatory screenings and exams, things of that nature. And we have plans that you'll see later on, or we'll talk about a little bit later on in terms of where we go from here to capture that business.
We're already seeing an increase with our CDLs and our DOT exams. We have some outside areas that patients are actually coming to Ellensburg, traveling to Ellensburg to get those exams. And the reason for that is these other clinics, you pull a number, you sit in the lobby, you wait for 3, 4, 5 hours, and these are truck drivers that they don't have paid time off and sick time or vacation. So if they're not on the road, they're not making money. They have found that it's a quick call to us or a quick walk-in, and they can get that test done. So that word of mouth is already starting to happen, and we're starting to see an increase in those exams.
I think we have a truck driver training school even that is not in Kittitas County contact us, and they send all of their students our direction. So I think that's pretty positive. Some of the successes over the past year include an improvement event that was held in May. And Carrie, I don't know if you want to speak to that at all.
Yeah, well, I was going to look for my numbers here. In May, we held the improvement event, and it was really interesting to see. So this was really looking at all of our processes. What is it? It's a brand new service line. So with that, we created some redundancies in different processes that we didn't even realize. And so in looking at our patient volumes from May, when we actually held the event, to current, our visit numbers have increased because we're more efficient. And I don't have these numbers in front of me,
but they are going on. They are. We'll talk more about that. And then keeping our fingers on the pulse sort of what our customers are asking for and needing, the hours of operation of the clinic have shifted. So the clinic is open earlier now, which seems to be where the demand is lying. So that's been a success. We've also found ourselves with a sound booth, which, to keep it again really high level, it just allows us to do certain types of audiometric testing, meeting KOC requirements for certain industries. So this is a good thing for occupational medicine. And then outreach and marketing, we've met with all of our partner clinics in the community, both KVH and non-KVH, as well as businesses. And there's a lot more still that we can do. A lot more room for growth with that. Some of the challenges over the past year, I think really are listed here. Medical oversight is one of the primary challenges I think that clinic has experienced. A medical directorship at a 0.2 FTE is really hard to find. We had a medical director here, as you know, at 1.0 for 5 months, full-time 5 months, and that really was off base from the pro forma. So that created quite a bit of variance there. And so without that medical directorship, Dr. Martin has stepped in and is filling that role, but that continues to be a challenge moving forward. Charting and billing, so the clinic operates currently out of 2 different EHR systems. That's a little bit clunky with billing and scheduling and some other things. And then startup needs. There was difficulty in determining comprehensive startup needs, so it's a little bit tricky to estimate every little piece of equipment that would be needed for this clinic, and so there were some costs added in after the fact, contributing to some variance.
I had a question about the 2 separate EHR systems. I was kind of hoping I wouldn't have to see those 3 letters again for a while. But why 2 separate ones? And is this something that's corrected or long term they have to are going to be corrected?
It will be corrected. So currently they're on NextGen and Cerner, and it is recommended to have the records separated. So what we're working towards now, and this goes into, it says 5-year plan, but it's a now plan, the simplified billing as well. We're shifting on November 26th, we're shifting all of those records into Cerner, and they will be identified, and the last name will be a little bit different. We'll put some initials in front of the last name to identify that as the separate record and secure them in that fashion. So we're finding a workaround to get away from the two separate, to having our feet in two separate canoes here and getting them all into one, but yet still securing that record.
Is the concern that Cerner, being helpful as it is going to try to merge their regular account?
This is actually something that went to the Standards Committee, and in Cerner there is no way to separate them.
Correct.
So,
Because they have the same source, or it recognizes the same.
yeah. So, yeah.
It's one source.
Well, see, I mean, if you have like a Mike Smith, Mike Jones, that could be like 10 people in one account, so it's got to be more than the same, right?
Yeah, the specific kind of exam that we need to keep separate is when the employer is paying for the exam. It has to be a separate record. And Cerner, by the time you duplicate their date of birth, their social security number, and their name, Cerner is not going to let you have two charts for that.
Right.
So we had to come up with a tweak. We did a lot of work exploring Cerner's ability to compartmentalize, and discovered that it has a very hierarchical confidentiality structure. So if you have just a general encounter, anybody can see it. If you label it as with different degrees of sensitivity, you have to have higher levels of clearance to look down, but you can't silo it vertically. So you can't have a record that the MA at Workplace Health can see, but the MA or the physician at FME can't see. So,
Bob, you've been crunching some numbers.
Yeah, so what's our potential number of visits we could see in a day? What's our max number? And I think it looks like we're averaging about 9.79 patients a day.
Okay, so with the visits, we'll get to that on the next page.
Oh, okay.
Shall we proceed there, or do you want to take a quick look at the financial analysis portion of
Okay.
this? The net patient revenue for the rolling 12-month period was $282,064, so there's a variance of $108,500 roughly. The largest variance again was found in salaries due to excess staffing for medical directorship. Regarding supply costs, you'll see a pretty big variance there as well. Some of that is accounted for in that some of the small equipment like the EKG machine, audiometer, I think signage, yeah, some of the small equipment was expensed under supplies rather than capitalized with startup equipment, so that'll create a variance right there. And then just as a note, because we're often asked what's included with the other expenses, so in this case, other expenses includes the monthly lease payments, purchase services, which are largely laboratory charges we found today, I think Carrie found, interpreter services, things like that, and continued education and medical staff training. So with this service line, there's specialized training for the nursing and support staff, for drug screen, collector training, KOC certification to be able to do the audiometric testing, things of that nature. On the next page, you'll see the break-even analysis, and I think this is what you're speaking to, Bob. We did the break-even analysis with a charges per day model rather than a visits per day. In other service lines, we've used visits per day. With this particular service line, with the EHR that we have, that gets complicated because there's a lot of visits that generate quite a bit of revenue that do not require any provider time. And I think Jason can speak a little bit.
Yeah, the visits that you see like on the stats reports are all face-to-face provider visits. So whenever you do anything in analysis that's like per visit, anything that we've done the clinics is always they see a provider. With Workplace Health, there's so much that comes in, they don't see a provider, they just come in, they see the nurse or the MA, or they just complete paperwork for them. It's a chargeable procedure, just filling out paperwork, that we couldn't land on just using the provider's visits as a metric to benchmark.
So that 1685 visit counts is actually, there's, on the very front page.
Yes, so it's not
type of service, that's.
So it's not even visits, that's basically billable procedures. So there's one person there to come in, get a DOT exam and a drug screen and a workers' comp visit all at once. So that would count as 3.
So it might have been more accurate to say procedure counts by service type. I mean, if that helps you think about what we're trying to show. Jason's absolutely right. You can come in for multiple services in one visit. So the break-even analysis, again, using charges per day, you can see here the first 2 columns are the year-to-date overall charges through August of this year. And then from that, we pulled our per-day charges. That last column to the right, we just wanted to show what the adjusted break-even charges per day requirement would be with using a 0.2 medical director, because obviously that drops the required charges per day to break even.
We didn't want to pull out, since it's just a snapshot of the year-to-date, we didn't want to pull out from the expenses what we did compensate or overcompensate for staffing. So rather we just did that adjustment column to show if we were staffed at the 0.2, this is what it would be.
And in looking at the charges per day graph underneath, I just wanted to show the upwards trend. There is a ever so slight dip here in August, but really that is very likely due to the fact that charges probably just hadn't fully dropped when these numbers were pulled, because the visit counts can, the procedure counts or continue to go up. So we saw that today. So in all likelihood, August is still up. We just, when we pulled these, it was too close to the end of the month, I think. The average charge per day for the past 3 months is $1,740. So you can see that's a higher number than what we're showing in break-even charges per day above. Yes, above. And so adjusted for a 0.2 FTE physician medical director, we would just need to increase our charges per day by $349, which, considering how much business there is still left to capture with the employer-related services and regulatory required services like DOT exams, drug screens, all of the things that are not injury care related, I think this is really a positive thing. $350 a day is pretty doable, especially considering the upward trend.
On the 5-year plan, I would hope to grow CW under that, as we haven't been able to crack that metric, and obviously
Speaking of central flight physicals, I can't remember if they are under Workplace Health or if they're separately under clinic.
They're separate. They're with Dr. Smith in general surgery, because he's the one certified clinician.
The medical director we employed for 5 months was certified to do them as well, so there was potential at that point. The certification process to do these exams is pretty extensive, and I think you have to be the professor to get her to. So there's a lot of requirements around that. So right now they are living.
So I'm kind of stuck a little bit on the procedure counts. I mean, we have high potential. Right, so right now we're averaging about 9 a day. We could probably, with our current staffing, do maybe 8 times that. We could do,
So some of the things around the 5-year plan are, we talked a little bit about simplified billing. Medical review officer or MRO work is another area I think we could expand, but I wanted to speak to what you're saying, Bob, just in terms of where that business lies, there is still more work to do, which is not called out directly in the 5-year plan, but I know it's just ongoing and happening right now today. It's just that sort of digging out how can we get that business? You know, there's an operator training school. You can go there tomorrow and test all their students for federal drug testing, which is a requirement of theirs. It's just making that outreach plan, and that's happening, I think, every single day. Tanner and Terry. So that should bring more business in the coming year, which will be really helpful. Also, last year we started this clinic really when occupational medicine is at its least busy time. So we launched it in September, and around the winter time, the layoffs occur in a lot of these industries. So I think this year we have an established base that will help us through that time, and we can just build upon that too. So next year's numbers, I think, we'll be pretty confident will look quite a bit better.
So you think there's demand, we just need to capture this?
Yes.
Having to change behaviors and get in there when the contract is up.
And create the talk. I mean, the hay hauling companies all talk to each other. So once Callaway found out we were doing some work for Ward Rue, then it becomes easier for them to say, hey, yeah, why don't you come visit us and take a look at our operations, see what we can do, which we did do. So that needed to happen, and it's starting to happen more.
Now what about, so are we still getting folks from Yakima that we,
Yes.
so, DOT type stuff?
Yes.
Yeah, that's largely DOT. That's largely DOT, and that's what's increasing.
I think our provider has some connections in other industries too that are outside Kittitas County, but close enough that will be feasible for us to reach out and capture that business as well.
So what's our goal for hitting the break-even?
Our goal for hitting.
Yeah, when can we expect this to start paying?
Well, I think that's, to Lisa's point, that's work that we're doing every day. So when Ryan has a lull in the day, he is on the phone, he is making connections, community connections. He's out there beating the pavement. I know Lisa is going to join him in those efforts and just making sure we connect with some local businesses. We have a business list that we're going to be sending out mailers. But a mailer's not enough. So you send out the mailer, and as soon as that happens, as soon as that drops, then we need to be on that phone and making those connections. And that's going to take all of us to be on.
And it's worth pointing out that we're getting unsolicited approaches from employers as well, including from Yakima. I think the one thing that I would want to call out, well, two things. One is a significant chunk of the variance was the medical director salary. And so obviously that's not going to be a recurring burden or an ongoing burden.
You're doing it for free, right?
Pretty much. I stopped by HR earlier today and asked about that. Apparently I'm doing most of this for free. But,
You are.
No, the thing I really want to call out is the job that Ryan has done through some incredible chaos. And he has been an absolute stalwart, not just in as a provider, but in supporting the staff and building the business. He's made the lack of a medical director almost invisible.
I agree with that.
And I can't say enough about the job he's doing.
He's committed and incredibly knowledgeable even about the billing side and what all of the aspects and things that we could be billing for, areas that we're not experts in. So he's done a great job. And then you see our 5-year plan below. We've talked about the simplified billing. That's moving to the one EHR. Lisa spoke about the MRO. Ortho injections could also start increasing some of that, the visits coming in, offering things like that, joint injections for workers' compensation injuries. And then later, much later down the road, we're looking at like the mobile services and how can we go to the employer. We know that there's an investment in that, so that's something that we want to first build our brick and mortar business prior to looking at mobile. Hearing conservation is something that Ryan is incredibly interested in, as well as wellness and offering that to our large So I want to quickly point out that this tool has been, it's like soft as butter because it's been touched so much. This is the financial sustainability team that has put this tool together, and so Roy and Liana have their fingerprints all over this. Jason and Lisa have done a great job, and Lydia has directed us to make sure to stay focused on what we needed to get done to get this tool completed. So thanks to all of them.
I would just say that I cannot remember a time when performance for them to board and meeting and actually follow it up and help themselves accountable to the program. So, I also want to own the stumbles in the first 5 months of the clinic. The lessons learned, I made some decisions over-hired into that director position, and not only are we seeing the consequences in terms of expenses, but also in disruption to really getting the clinic on the very systematic way. And I probably should have waited until after my evaluation. But lessons learned, and I think we've applied those lessons to things like wound care, as we brought wound care up. And
Other questions?
No, I appreciate this work too, because it does make the decisions pretty easy when you see it laid out like this. Yeah, it's good work.
Matt, if I could just make a comment, particularly for the benefit of the other commissioners, hopefully it's not pointing out the obvious, but if you take a look at page 55 and 56 in your packet, again, that's a new service line analysis. And the second item is the service line review. If you think of this as process and what's the outcome of the decisions that are made, there was a go, no-go decision that was made in, September of 2017 about pursuing this. What we now have is a flow chart that tells you how we're going to put that information together. The pro forma that Lisa put together on the workplace health would fit into that workflow on page 55. And then after 9 months or 10 months or a period of time to determine, well, what's been the outcome of that decision? And like Julie was saying, she can't recall when we've ever taken that look back and also look forward to the future. And we use the service line review on page 56 as sort of the template that was used to develop the workplace health document here. So I think we're now into that process of saying, okay, what services do we want to utilize that we don't have as part of KVH? So let's take our line analysis and follow through with that, make the decision by the board in terms of go, no go, and then once we do pursue some of those service options, now let's determine the results, and we have the template that helps us identify that. And as Kerry was saying, I mean, Lydia's put together a great financial sustainability work group, and Kerry, Jason, and Lisa have done a great job of identifying the details and nuts and bolts of what we need to know as commissioners for making decisions, and then saying, okay, did we make a good decision or not? And this helps us, I think, make that kind of determination. So I do want to commend that work group and the work that they've done, and I think they've given us a good roadmap to follow for some of the decisions we need to make.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's very transparent. It allows us to assess things. It's great work.
I just, like Julie was saying, how important it is to actually take a hard look at it, and I think especially if it's a service you should continue to, to look at, the facts and make some decisions based on that rather than just kind of.
Yeah. Well, in another year we'll be taking a look at it again. So
yeah, I look forward to comparing this. This is good.
Thank you.
Anything else? Thank you very much. Okay, CEO evaluation. I just wanted to update everybody. So we have evaluations from the board and from the senior leadership team. Bob and I are in the process of summarizing these for the board. The board is going to have a special meeting, I guess when Liana comes back, so probably in a couple of weeks. And then just to discuss this and salary, and then Bob and I will meet with you, Julie, to talk about the outcomes of it and to give you the summaries. So, do you have any questions? Or so that's where we are. Okay, so that's it for old business, no new business. At this point then, let's take a 10-minute break and then go into executive session. How long do you think we need?
40 minutes.
All right, so let's say till let's
Let's
say till 8:40 then, and we'll reconvene.
And action is
8:40.
anticipated.
Thank you all for coming, and we'll see you.